In this session I want to talk about the sometimes referred to as the RASCI or RASCI matrix. This matrix, this approach is just simply a way of evaluating performance and looking at organizations through a particular set of criteria. And these are simply responsible or responsibility, accountable, supportive, consultative, and informed. And we're going to look at the organization from different perspectives according to this. And this gives us the RASCI or ASCI matrix: responsible, accountable, supportive, consulted, and informed. So it's a responsibility assignment methodology. It's looking at the performance of organizations and looking at the responsibilities within the organization to ensure that the objectives of the organization are met. So looking at responsibilities, looking at who's doing what, and looking at the way it's portrayed and managed right through the production process. So it's widely used in project management. This particular matrix is often spoken about. It's used to identify roles and responsibilities during project implementation or change management. So it looks at the roles of people, line managers and operators and so on. It looks at their roles and looks at their responsibilities and can trace through the impact they've had in project implementation or in looking at how they went about managing change. Let's see how it works out in practice. First of all, the responsible, the person who owns the problem or the project. Within organizations, people may be allocated as product champions. These are the people who push the product through the system and push it into the market and get it delivered and make sure that it comes to fruition, make sure that the project is born, it is delivered. It's not just talked about, it happens. So who owns the problem and who owns the project? Who's dealing with it? Whose responsibility is it? So it's a question of identifying that person. Then we've got accountability. This is the person to whom R is accountable, the person who signs off the work. So there is a person who needs to sign off the work, and this is the person the person who owns the project, the responsible person. This is the person needs to report to the accountable person, the person who is accountable for this particular project. So the project has been assigned to somebody, and we can call that person R. That's the responsible person, and that person needs to go to the accountable person to have it signed off, to have it approved in the end. So now we have two people here involved. We have the responsible person, the one who's going to deal with the issue, get it done, and we have the accountable person, the person who's taken responsibility on board but also will sign it off and approve the work that's been conducted by the responsible person. Supportive. Now, supportive is the person who supports the implementation. This could be a designer, it could be a marketing manager, it could be a transport manager, it can be somebody who is related to the project, who has got an interest in the project, and a person who is related to it in some way, and they support it. So we can have supportive people involved. So we have the accountable person who owns the thing. He or she is the person who's going to see this project through. and they're going to get it signed off at the end by a more senior person, but they can have supportive support from others. There's also those who are consulted, who provide information, expertise that's necessary to complete the project. So there's supportive ones, people who may join in and help at certain stages in the project, and also there's the ones who are consulted to get their expertise and get their opinions to help in the overall delivery. And then we have the person who is informed. This is the person who needs to be notified of results, not necessarily consulted. Nobody's looking for their opinions, perhaps, just simply informing them of the results. This could be a senior manager, or it could be someone down the managerial chain, but who is responsible for ensuring that the information is passed to the appropriate people. So it's the person who is informed. So it's a communication model for project implementation. That's what the RASCI Matrix is, or RASCI Matrix is. It's a communications model for project implementation. And it shows who is responsible, who owns the project. In other words, who's the person who's going to deal with this and make sure it's brought to fruition, it's brought to a conclusion. Who's the person who's accountable? Who's the person who must sign it off? So the person doing it must report to this other person who will then sign it off. And then of course we have the supportive, the consulted and the informed. These are other people within the organization that may supply support in the case of the supportive, or may supply information in the form of the consulted, and who have to be informed at the end that the project has been delivered. Let's look at just slightly differently. Let's say we have a line manager, a project manager, service manager, departmental manager, and we have the chief executive officer. And here we have a plan. We have to prepare detailed plans, and then we have implementation. So we have a plan which is general. We're going to do something, or the business is going to do something. It's got a plan. Now it needs detailed plans. How will it actually do it? Moving from the very general to the very detailed. And then it needs to be implemented. So we can identify who's going to be consulted, who's going to be informed, who's going to supply support, who's accountable, who's responsible. So the responsible people could be the ones who are taking on board the plan. This is a very general plan, but they are responsible for it. They need to consult perhaps the line managers to see if the line managers can do what's been expected of them. The project manager may need to be informed that this is what the plan is, or they're thinking of this particular plan. The service manager may be consulted to see what support the service manager and his or her staff can give to the plan. So we have a departmental manager then who is responsible to bring all of this information together. This is the general plan, and then report it off to the CEO, to the chief executive officer, who will consider it, and if it's a good idea at that stage, will sign it off. Now we go to the detailed plans. Well, the detailed plans, the responsibilities and the accountability and so on may change at this stage, because these are detailed plans that need to come through the organization. So the project manager may now become responsible. It's a detailed plan now. Now it's not, if you like, a strategic plan or an operational plan that's been worked out by the business. Now it's a very detailed plan, and that's what's required. It's how this plan can come into existence, and to do that, the project manager may take it over and plan it in detail. There's been a rough draft, a very broad draft of some idea, which was the plan. Now the project manager becomes responsible and starts to become a detailed plan of how they will actually do this particular task. Again, there'll be some people consulted and some people informed and some people with support. The departmental manager may be the accountable person in this case. So the responsible person is the project manager, but it needs to be signed off by the departmental manager. So the responsible manager is responsible for making sure that the detailed plans are drawn up, and when that's done, it gets signed off by the departmental manager, who will then perhaps inform the CEO that the plan has now moved and we're now into the stage of detailed plans have been delivered. So the next move is to implementation. Well, once the detailed plans are in place, responsibilities may shift again. This time the responsibility may shift to the line manager, who's now responsible for implementing the plan. The detailed plans have been worked out. Now they're passed over to the line manager, who is responsible for implementing it, setting up the machinery if that's the case, or changing the layout of the particular plant, or changing something, doing something which makes the detailed plans takes the detailed plans into operations. It implements the detailed plans, and the person responsible here is the line manager. And the line manager may be responsible to the project manager, because the project manager knows what's required. So the project manager needs to know that this is going to work. The detailed plans that was drawn up by the project manager. So in this case, the line manager will implement, and the project manager may be signed off. The departmental manager may be informed, but also the CEO could be informed. So now we have a matrix showing how the whole project has come from a general idea, the formation of a plan, detailed plans, into implementation, and who is responsible throughout the organization at the various stages. And the matrix shows who's responsible, who's reporting to who needs to sign it off, and where it goes next. So there is control on the idea, and it shows how ideas can be implemented. So it's a useful matrix. It's one that crops up quite a lot in project management and in that sort of area, and it's worth knowing how it works. That's all I'm going to deal with here. I'm going to leave it at that and say thank you for watching.